What does it feel like when your whole life is returned to sender, sealed, notarized, and refunded? How do you explain to the world that you were left not by a jealous husband, but by a man who simply erased you? I never thought a knock at the door could sound like the end of everything, but when the courier handed me those legal papers, I realized the joke was on me. The engagement party was supposed to be flawless. I'd spent weeks curating every detail. The upscale restaurant with its exposed brick and Edison bulbs, the carefully chosen guest list, even the lighting that would make our photos pop on Instagram. What I hadn't anticipated was how my brilliant idea to invite Julian would create such tension. "Eveline, are you sure about this?" Nathan asked for the third time that morning, adjusting his tie in our minimalist apartment's hallway mirror. Everything about our space screamed modern sophistication. Clean lines, neutral colors, not a single item out of place. Just like I wanted our relationship to appear. "Nathan, we've been through this." I smoothed my dress, a perfect shade of blush that would photograph beautifully. Inviting Julian shows we're mature, evolved adults. It's 2024, exes can be friends. It's actually a sign of emotional intelligence. Nathan's reflection met mine in the mirror. "But your ex-boyfriend walking into our engagement party." "Our former relationship ended years ago," I interrupted, applying another coat of lipstick. "Julian and I are best friends now, nothing more. The fact that you're still jealous shows you need to work on your insecurities." I watched Nathan's jaw tighten slightly, but he said nothing. That was Nathan, always avoiding confrontation, always keeping the peace. Sometimes I wondered if he had any fire in him at all. The restaurant buzzed with conversation when we arrived. My mother, Clara, immediately swept over, in a cloud of expensive perfume and designer fabric. "Darling, you look absolutely radiant." She air-kissed both my cheeks. "And Nathan, so handsome. Now, where is this Julian I've heard so much about? I'm dying to meet the man brave enough to celebrate his ex-girlfriend's engagement." My father, Alan, appeared beside her with 2 glasses of champagne, his expression more reserved. "Eveline," he said quietly, "are you certain this is wise? People are already talking." "Let them talk, Daddy. We're showing everyone what modern love looks like. No jealousy, no possessiveness, just genuine friendship and growth." Nathan's family had claimed a table in the corner. His mother, Maggie, sat rigidly upright, her smile forced as she watched me navigate the room. His brother Oliver kept shooting glances toward the door, clearly uncomfortable with the entire situation. Then Julian arrived. He moved through the crowd like he owned it, his photographer's eye taking in every angle, every face. When he spotted me, his smile was warm, intimate, the same smile that had made me fall for him 5 years ago. "Eveline." He pulled me into a hug that lasted just a beat too long. "You look incredible." "Julian, I'm so glad you could make it." I felt Nathan appear beside me, his presence suddenly tense. "You remember Nathan, of course." "Of course. Congratulations, man." Julian extended his hand, and Nathan shook it with polite firmness. "You're getting an amazing woman. I should know. I had her first." The comment hung in the air like smoke. Julian laughed as if it were a joke, but I caught the way Maggie's face went pale across the room. "Julian," I said quickly, "let me introduce you to everyone." The evening progressed with Julian charming my parents, telling stories about our college days, and positioning himself as the supportive best friend. He was perfect, exactly the image I wanted to project. See how mature we are? See how we've all moved on? But I noticed things, the way conversations paused when Julian touched my arm, the sideways glances from Nathan's family, the forced quality of Nathan's smile. When Julian stood to give a toast, I felt a flutter of excitement. This was it, the moment that would cement our sophisticated, modern approach to relationships. "To Eveline and Nathan," Julian began, raising his glass. "I've known Eveline for 8 years, loved her for 5, and I can honestly say—" He paused, his eyes finding mine across the room. She's the most passionate, beautiful, complicated woman I've ever met. Nathan, you're getting someone who will challenge you, change you, and never let you settle for ordinary. To the woman who taught me what real love feels like, even if we couldn't make it work. The silence that followed was deafening, then scattered applause, uncertain and uncomfortable. I felt Nathan's hand slip away from mine. "That was beautiful," I said loudly, trying to salvage the moment. "See, everyone? This is what emotional maturity looks like." But even as I smiled and posed for photos, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. The carefully constructed image was developing cracks. Later that night, as we undressed in our bedroom, Nathan was unusually quiet. "The toast was a bit much, don't you think?" he said finally. "I thought it was lovely. Julian was honoring our friendship." "Eveline, he said he loved you, present tense. You're reading too much into it." He misspoke. Nathan sat on the edge of our bed, still in his dress shirt. Half the room looked like they were at a funeral. My mother barely spoke to me when we left. "Your mother needs to get over her traditional hang-ups. This is how modern couples handle things." Modern couples don't usually invite their exes to give intimate toasts at their engagement parties. I felt a spike of irritation. Are you going to be jealous and possessive, or are you going to trust me? Because if you can't handle me having male friends, maybe we need to reconsider this whole thing. The threat hung between us. Nathan looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You're right. I'm sorry. I trust you." But as I posted carefully curated photos to Instagram later that night, adding captions about love taking new shapes and grateful for all the people who've shaped our journey, I couldn't ignore the comments starting to pour in. Most were supportive, but others were questioning. "Wait, is that your ex giving the toast? This is either really mature or really weird. Girl, I could never. Props to you for being so evolved." Then I saw Julian's post from the same evening. A photo of us hugging, with the caption, "Some connections never fade," celebrating the woman who'll always be my muse. In soulmates, ils true love, ils complicated. My stomach dropped. I immediately texted him, "Julian, that caption is inappropriate, please change it." His response came instantly. "Why? It's honest. Isn't that what tonight was about? Honesty?" I stared at my phone, realizing that my perfect plan might not have been so perfect after all. The next morning brought a flood of notifications. Julian's post had gone viral in our social circle, shared and screenshot across multiple platforms. I found myself explaining and defending all morning, crafting responses that maintained my narrative while trying to contain the damage. "Darling, you're overthinking this," my mother said when I called her in a panic. "You looked absolutely radiant last night, and Julian's toast was moving. People are just jealous they don't have the emotional intelligence to maintain friendships like yours." I was having lunch with my parents at their pristine home, surrounded by wedding magazines and Pinterest boards my mother had been assembling. Everything was cream and gold, perfectly coordinated, the kind of backdrop that photographed beautifully. "But people are talking, Mum. Some of the comments." "Let them talk. You're pioneering a new kind of love story." Clara flipped through a bridal magazine, pointing to a photo. "Speaking of which, I had the most wonderful idea last night. You know how traditional weddings have the father give away the bride?" My father looked up from his newspaper, eyebrows raised. "What if Julian walked you down the aisle instead?" Clara continued, her voice bright with excitement. "Think about it. Symbolic closure, new beginnings, showing the world that love comes in many forms. It would be absolutely groundbreaking." I felt my breath catch. The idea was bold, dramatic, exactly the kind of statement that would cement my image as someone who transcended ordinary relationship rules. "Mom, that's actually brilliant." "Absolutely not," my father said firmly. "Eveline, that would be a humiliation for Nathan. And for you." "Daddy, you're being old-fashioned. This is about showing that we've moved beyond jealousy and possessiveness. This is about common sense and basic respect. Alan folded his newspaper with sharp precision. You're asking your fiancé to watch another man, a man who clearly still has feelings for you, perform one of the most symbolic acts of a wedding ceremony. How is that respectful? But I was already envisioning it. The photos, the story, the way it would set us apart from every other boring, traditional couple. It's symbolic closure, Daddy. It shows that Julian and I have processed our past and are ready to celebrate my future. Clara clapped her hands together. It's poetry in motion. Eveline, you have to propose this to Nathan. I will, tonight. My father shook his head. You're playing with fire, sweetheart, and Nathan's not the only one who'll get burned. That evening, I suggested dinner at Nathan's mother's house. Maggie had been quiet since the engagement party, and I wanted to address any concerns head-on. Better to control the narrative before it controlled me. Maggie's house was everything our apartment wasn't. Warm, cluttered, filled with family photos and comfortable furniture that had seen decades of use. She greeted us politely but coolly, her usual warmth noticeably absent. Oliver was already there with his wife Sarah, and the atmosphere felt strained from the moment we walked in. Nathan seemed to sense it too, his shoulders tense as we gathered around the dinner table. So, I began brightly, cutting into my chicken. I wanted to talk to everyone about the wedding ceremony. I have an idea that I think will make our wedding really special and meaningful. Maggie looked up from her plate, wariness in her eyes. I've been thinking about the processional, and I want to do something that represents growth and closure. Instead of my father walking me down the aisle, I'd like Julian to do it. The silence was immediate and complete. Oliver's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Sarah's eyes widened. Maggie set down her water glass with deliberate care. I'm sorry, Maggie said slowly. Did you say you want your ex-boyfriend to walk you down the aisle at your wedding to my son? I know it sounds unconventional, but think about what it represents. Julian and I have processed our past relationship in a healthy way. Having him symbolically give me away to Nathan shows that we've all moved beyond jealousy and possessiveness. It's actually quite beautiful. Beautiful? Oliver's voice was sharp. Eveline, that's not beautiful. That's humiliation. Only if you view relationships through a traditional, possessive lens. This is about emotional evolution. Nathan hadn't said a word. He sat perfectly still, staring at his plate. Nathan, I prompted, what do you think? He looked up slowly. I think I need to process this. There's nothing to process, Maggie said, her voice rising. This is inappropriate, Eveline. Deeply inappropriate. You're asking my son to be humiliated in front of everyone we know. I'm asking your son to be part of something revolutionary, something that shows we're above petty jealousies. Petty jealousies? Maggie stood up abruptly. Having basic self-respect isn't petty jealousy. This is cruel. Maggie, please sit down, I said calmly. I understand this challenges traditional thinking, but traditional thinking? She laughed bitterly. Eveline, this isn't about tradition. This is about dignity. Nathan's dignity, your dignity, the dignity of marriage itself. Nathan pushed back from the table and walked out of the room. I heard the front door close a moment later. Now look what you've done, I said to Maggie. You've upset him with your closed-minded reaction. I've upset him? Maggie's voice was incredulous. Eveline, you just told him you want another man, a man who's clearly still in love with you, to walk you down the aisle at your own wedding. And you think I'm the problem? Julian isn't in love with me, we're friends. That man looked at you last night like you were the only woman in the room. Everyone saw it. Everyone except you, apparently. I stood up, smoothing my dress. I can see this conversation isn't going to be productive. When you're ready to support Nathan's happiness instead of clinging to outdated traditions, let me know. I found Nathan sitting in his car in the driveway, staring straight ahead. Nathan, your mother is being completely unreasonable. I thought you'd want to be part of something meaningful and progressive. He turned to look at me, and for a moment, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before, something that might have been disappointment. Eveline, do you hear yourself? Do you understand what you're asking me to do? I'm asking you to trust me, to trust us, to show the world that our love is strong enough to transcend conventional boundaries. You're asking me to watch another man walk my bride down the aisle, a man who told a room full of people last night that he loves you. He didn't say. He did, and now you want him to symbolically give you to me, like some kind of transaction between the men in your life. I felt a flash of irritation. You're twisting this into something it's not. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Then he started the car. I need some time to think. That night, I texted Julian. I have a proposal for you, something that would make our wedding really special. His response was immediate. Anything for you? What did you have in mind? Would you walk me down the aisle? The phone rang within seconds. Eveline, are you serious? Julian's voice was warm, excited. That would be incredible. Absolutely. Yes. It's symbolic closure, a way to honor our past while celebrating my future. It's perfect. God, I can already picture it. You'll look so beautiful. I'll wear the navy suit, the one you always loved. After we hung up, I felt a surge of satisfaction. This was going to be beautiful, meaningful, revolutionary. People would talk about our wedding for years. I posted a cryptic Instagram story. Sometimes the most beautiful gestures are the ones that challenge convention. Can't wait to share what we have planned. Modern love, started breaking boundaries, Marnond wedding planning. The responses were immediate and divided. Some followers called me brave and evolved. Others questioned my judgment. But they were all talking, all engaged, all watching my story unfold. Late that night, as I scrolled through comments and reactions, I found a text from my father. Sweetheart, please reconsider. Some boundaries exist for good reasons. Don't sacrifice Nathan's dignity for the sake of being different. I deleted the text without responding. He would understand eventually. They all would. The wedding rehearsal was scheduled for Friday evening at the church, a beautiful traditional space that would provide the perfect contrast to our unconventional ceremony. I'd spent the week managing the fallout from my announcement, fielding calls from concerned relatives and friends who'd heard about our unique processional plan. Eveline, honey, are you sure about this? My cousin Lisa asked during her third phone call that week. I mean, I'm all for breaking traditions, but this seems what, Lisa? Well, potentially hurtful to Nathan, and honestly, a little attention-seeking. I'd been getting variations of this conversation all week. Even my bridesmaids were divided. Half thought I was being brave and progressive. The other half were clearly uncomfortable but trying to be supportive. Nathan had been distant since the dinner at his mother's house. He came home late, left early, and when we did talk, our conversations felt stilted and careful. When I tried to discuss wedding details, he'd nod and agree to everything with a detached politeness that was somehow worse than arguing. Are you excited about tonight? I asked him that morning as he got dressed for work. Sure, he said without looking at me. Should be interesting. Nathan, if you have concerns about the ceremony, we should talk about them. He paused in tying his tie. Would it matter? Would you change anything if I said I was uncomfortable? Of course it would matter, but I'd also want to understand why you're letting fear and traditional thinking hold us back from something beautiful. He finished with his tie and grabbed his briefcase. I'll see you at the church. The rehearsal was scheduled for 6 o'clock. I arrived early with Julian, who looked handsome in a casual button-down and dark jeans. He'd been texting me all week about the ceremony, asking about timing and logistics, clearly excited about his role. I've been thinking about what I'll say, he told me as we walked into the church. When the officiant asks who gives you away, I want to say something meaningful, something about how love takes many forms. Julian, let's keep it simple. Just I do, or her family and friends. But this is our moment, Eveline. Our chance to show everyone what real emotional maturity looks like. Our moment. The phrase made me slightly uncomfortable, but I pushed the feeling away. Nathan arrived with his family, and the tension was immediately palpable. Maggie barely acknowledged me, focusing instead on greeting the other guests. Oliver and Sarah were polite but distant. Nathan himself seemed to be moving through the motions with mechanical precision. The wedding coordinator, a cheerful woman named Beth, gathered everyone in the sanctuary to run through the processional. "All right, let's practice the timing," she announced. "Bridesmaids first, then we'll have Julian escort Eveline down the aisle to Nathan." I watched the faces in the small crowd. My parents, Nathan's family, our wedding party, a few close friends who'd come to observe. The reactions ranged from curious to uncomfortable to openly disapproving. Julian offered me his arm with a smile that was perhaps too intimate for the setting. "Ready, beautiful?" We began the slow walk down the aisle, and I felt every eye in the room tracking our movement. Julian walked with confident ease, occasionally whispering comments about how perfect this was, how meaningful, how brave we were being. When we reached Nathan at the altar, he looked pale but composed. The coordinator had us run through the giving away moment. "Who presents this woman to be married?" the officiant asked. Julian straightened, clearly relishing the moment. "I do, on behalf of everyone who loves her and wants to see her happy." The words hung in the air. I saw Nathan's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. "Perfect," Beth said brightly, though her smile looked forced. "Let's run through it once more for timing." We repeated the processional, and this time I noticed more details. The way Julian's hand covered mine on his arm. The way he looked at me when he thought no one was watching. The way Nathan's family exchanged glances behind us. After the rehearsal, we moved to the rehearsal dinner at a nearby restaurant. I'd chosen a private dining room with elegant lighting, perfect for photos and for the speech I'd prepared about our unconventional journey to this moment. The dinner started awkwardly, with stilted conversation and forced smiles. I could feel the undercurrent of tension, but I was determined to push through it. This was about showing everyone that love could transcend traditional boundaries. Julian, seated to my right with Nathan on my left, seemed to sense the mood and decided to lighten things with stories from our college days. He was charming and funny, and gradually, some of the tension eased. Then came time for toasts. My father spoke first, keeping his remarks brief and diplomatic. "To Eveline and Nathan, may your marriage be filled with love, respect, and understanding." Oliver toasted next, his words careful and formal. "To my brother and his bride, wishing you happiness and peace." Then Julian stood. "I asked Eveline if I could say a few words tonight," he began, his voice warm and confident. "I've known this incredible woman for 8 years, and I've watched her grow into someone who challenges conventions, who refuses to let society dictate how she should love or live." I felt a flutter of pride. This was exactly the message I wanted to send. "Tomorrow I'll have the honor of walking her down the aisle," Julian continued. "And I want everyone to know what a privilege that is. Eveline taught me what it means to love without possession, to care for someone so deeply that you want their happiness even when it means letting them go." He paused, his eyes finding mine. "She'll always be my muse, my inspiration, the woman who showed me what real passion looks like. Nathan, you're not just getting a wife tomorrow. You're getting a force of nature, someone who will challenge you, change you, and love you in ways you never thought possible." Julian raised his glass. "To Eveline, who taught me that some connections are eternal, and to Nathan, who gets to discover what I already know, that loving her is the greatest adventure you'll ever have." The silence that followed was deafening, then scattered, uncertain applause. I felt my cheeks burn, but I smiled and raised my glass. "Thank you, Julian, that was beautiful." But when I turned to Nathan, his seat was empty. I looked around and saw him walking toward the exit, his movements controlled but purposeful. "Nathan," I called, but he didn't turn around. The room erupted in uncomfortable murmurs. I stood quickly, trying to salvage the situation. "Nathan's just feeling emotional," I announced with a bright smile. "You know how grooms get before the big day. I'll go check on him." I found Nathan in the parking lot, standing by his car. "Nathan, what are you doing? You're embarrassing us both." He turned to look at me, and his expression was unlike anything I'd ever seen from him. Calm, but with something steel-hard underneath. "Embarrassing us? Eveline, do you have any idea what just happened in there? Julian gave a lovely toast about friendship and Julian gave a love letter in front of our wedding party, in front of my family." Nathan's voice was quiet but intense. "He called you his muse. He said your connection is eternal, and you sat there smiling like it was perfectly normal. You're overreacting. You're letting jealousy cloud your judgment." Nathan was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe I am. Maybe this is exactly what I should expect from our marriage." He got in his car and drove away, leaving me standing alone in the parking lot. When I returned to the dinner, the atmosphere had shifted completely. Conversations were hushed, and people avoided making eye contact with me. Julian seemed oblivious to the tension, chatting animatedly with my mother about photography and art. I tried to restore normalcy, but the evening felt fractured. People left early, making polite excuses about the big day tomorrow. By 9 o'clock, only my parents, Julian, and I remained. "Well," my mother said brightly, "that was certainly memorable." "It was perfect," Julian agreed. "Eveline, tomorrow is going to be incredible." But as I drove home alone to our empty apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. My phone buzzed with notifications. People had recorded Julian's toast and posted it to social media. The comments were pouring in, and they weren't all positive. "This is so uncomfortable to watch. Where did the groom go?" "I feel bad for Nathan. This is either really evolved or really messed up." I turned off my phone and sat in our pristine living room, surrounded by wedding gifts and cards from people wishing us happiness. Tomorrow was supposed to be perfect, the culmination of months of planning and the beginning of our new life together. So why did I feel like everything was falling apart? I woke up alone on my wedding day. Nathan hadn't come home the night before, and his absence felt like a hole in the carefully orchestrated morning I'd planned. I called him 3 times before he answered. "Nathan, where are you? The photographers will be here in an hour." "I'm at Oliver's." His voice was flat, distant. I needed some space to think. "Nathan, it's our wedding day. Whatever you're feeling, we can work through it after the ceremony. Please don't let last night ruin everything we've planned." There was a long pause. "Eveline, do you understand what you've done? What you're asking me to do?" "I'm asking you to trust me, to trust us, to show up for our wedding." Another pause. "I'll be at the church." The line went dead. My mother arrived with the hair and makeup team, filling our apartment with chatter and activity. She was in full wedding mother mode, directing everyone with military precision while I sat in my robe, trying to project calm confidence. "Darling, you look pale," she observed, studying my reflection in the mirror. "Are you nervous? It's perfectly natural." "I'm fine, Mom, just tired." "Where's Nathan? Shouldn't he be getting ready here?" "He stayed at Oliver's last night. You know, tradition. Groom not seeing the bride before the ceremony." It wasn't technically a lie, but it felt hollow. The morning passed in a blur of preparations. My bridesmaids arrived, chattering about the rehearsal dinner and asking carefully neutral questions about Nathan's early departure. I deflected with jokes about pre-wedding jitters and groom anxiety. Julian texted throughout the morning, "Big day. I'm honored to be part of this. Can't wait to see you in your dress. This is going to be beautiful." By noon, I was dressed and ready, a vision in white silk and lace, exactly as I'd envisioned. The photographers captured every moment, and I made sure to post a few carefully curated shots to Instagram with captions about love, growth, and new beginnings. But the comments on my social media had taken a decidedly mixed turn. The video from Julian's toast had gone viral in our extended social circle, and opinions were sharply divided. This is either the most mature thing I've ever seen or the most delusional. Girl, your ex is still in love with you and everyone can see it. Where was the groom during that toast? Yikes. I could never let my ex walk me down the aisle. Props to you for being so evolved. This is painful to watch. I turned off my phone and focused on the final preparations. The church was beautiful, filled with flowers, candles, and the soft murmur of arriving guests. I waited in the bridal suite with my mother and bridesmaids, listening to the organ music and trying to calm my nerves. 5 minutes, ladies, the coordinator announced. Julian appeared in the doorway, handsome in his navy suit, the one I'd once loved seeing him in. Ready, beautiful? Ready. But as we lined up for the processional, I caught a glimpse of the sanctuary through the partially open doors. It was full, but the atmosphere felt charged, expectant in a way that made my stomach flutter with unease. The bridesmaids processed down the aisle to the traditional wedding march. Then it was our turn. Julian offered me his arm with that confident smile. This is it, Eveline. Our moment. The doors opened fully, and we began the slow walk down the aisle. I felt every eye in the room tracking our movement, heard the subtle shift in the collective breathing of the crowd. Some faces showed admiration, others curiosity, still others something that looked like pity. Nathan stood at the altar in his black tuxedo, looking handsome and composed. But when our eyes met, I saw something I'd never seen before, a kind of resigned sadness that made my chest tighten. We reached the altar, and the officiant began the ceremony. Who presents this woman to be married to this man? Julian straightened, his voice clear and confident. I do, with love and hope for her happiness. Nathan's expression didn't change, but I saw his hands clench slightly at his sides. The ceremony continued, but I could feel the undercurrent of tension in the room. During the exchange of rings, Nathan's hands were steady, his voice calm as he recited his vows. But there was something different about him, a distance I'd never felt before. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, Nathan kissed me with polite tenderness. The crowd applauded, but it felt perfunctory, obligatory. As we walked back down the aisle together, I caught glimpses of faces in the crowd. Some were smiling, but others looked uncomfortable, confused, even embarrassed. Julian was beaming as if he'd played the starring role in the ceremony. The reception was held at an elegant hotel ballroom. I'd planned every detail to perfection: the lighting, the flowers, the menu, the music. Everything was designed to create the perfect backdrop for our celebration. But something felt off from the moment we entered. Conversation seemed stilted, and I noticed people clustering in small groups, whispering among themselves. Several guests approached me with comments that felt loaded with subtext. What an interesting ceremony, Eveline. Very unique. I've never seen anything quite like that before. You certainly made a statement today. Nathan was polite but distant during the cocktail hour, making conversation with guests, but staying physically separate from me, except when photos required us to be together. During dinner, I noticed that Julian had positioned himself at a table with a clear view of the head table. He kept catching my eye and smiling, raising his glass in small, private toasts that made me increasingly uncomfortable. The real disaster came during the reception toasts. Oliver stood first, his expression carefully neutral. To Nathan and Eveline, may your marriage bring you both the happiness you deserve. The words were correct, but something in his tone felt ominous. Then Julian stood. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, he began, but watching this beautiful ceremony, I felt moved to share something. I felt Nathan tense beside me. Eveline and I have a connection that transcends traditional definitions, Julian continued. What we had was real, and what we have now is eternal friendship. Today, I had the honor of symbolically giving her to Nathan, but the truth is, you can't really give away someone like Eveline. She belongs to herself first, and then to whoever is lucky enough to earn her love. He raised his glass toward our table. To the woman who taught me that love isn't about possession, it's about appreciation. Nathan, take care of our girl. Our girl. The words hung in the air like a slap. I felt the entire room shift, heard the collective intake of breath. Nathan's face had gone completely white. That's enough, Nathan said quietly, but his voice carried across the suddenly silent room. Julian, oblivious or uncaring, continued. I just want everyone to know how special she is, how lucky we all are to love her. Nathan stood up slowly, his movement deliberate and controlled. That's enough, he repeated, louder this time. The room fell completely silent. Even the waitstaff stopped moving. Julian, I think you've said enough for one weekend. Nathan's voice was calm but steel hard. This is my wedding. Eveline is my wife, and I'd appreciate it if you'd remember that. Julian looked genuinely surprised. Nathan, You were just what? Declaring your eternal connection to my wife? Calling her our girl? At my wedding reception? I felt the blood drain from my face. This was spiraling out of control. Nathan, please, I said quietly. Let's not make a scene. He turned to look at me, and the expression in his eyes was unlike anything I'd ever seen from him. Make a scene? Eveline, your ex-boyfriend just gave a love letter disguised as a toast at our wedding reception, and you're worried about me making a scene. The room was dead silent now. I could see people recording with their phones, capturing every moment of what was supposed to be our perfect day. I think, Nathan continued, his voice carrying clearly across the ballroom, that everyone here has gotten quite enough entertainment for one evening. He walked out of the reception, leaving me standing alone at the head table in my wedding dress, surrounded by 200 guests and the sound of whispered conversations starting up like a wave. I tried to salvage the situation, making announcements about Nathan needing air, about groom nerves, about continuing the celebration. But the damage was done. The energy had shifted completely, and people began leaving early, offering polite excuses and awkward congratulations. By 10 o'clock, the reception was effectively over. Julian approached me as I stood among the wilting centerpieces and abandoned tables. Eveline, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to upset Nathan. I was just speaking from the heart. Julian, you need to leave, now. But I wanted to make sure you're okay. This isn't how today was supposed to end. Please, just go. I spent my wedding night alone in the hotel suite Nathan and I were supposed to share. He didn't answer his phone, didn't respond to texts. I sat in my wedding dress until dawn, watching social media explode with videos and commentary about the most awkward wedding reception of the year. The hashtag Josh Wedding Drama was trending locally, and the videos were being shared across multiple platforms. Comments ranged from sympathetic to scathing. I feel so bad for the groom. This is what happens when you try too hard to be different. The second-hand embarrassment is real. That poor man, she humiliated him in front of everyone. This is either very evolved or very messed up. The ex-boyfriend walking her down the aisle was weird enough, but that toast... As the sun rose on what should have been the first day of my married life, I realized that my attempt to create the perfect progressive love story had become a viral cautionary tale about public humiliation and the dangers of performative relationships, and Nathan was nowhere to be found. The week after my wedding was supposed to be our honeymoon in Tuscany. Instead, I spent it alone in our apartment, fielding calls from concerned relatives and watching our wedding disaster spread across social media like a virus. Nathan hadn't come home. He wasn't answering calls or responding to texts. When I finally reached Oliver, his response was curt. Nathan needs space to process what happened. He'll contact you when he's ready. Oliver, I'm his wife. We need to talk about this. Are you? Because from where I sat, it looked like you already had a husband, and it wasn't my brother. The videos from the reception had been viewed thousands of times. Someone had created a compilation of most awkward wedding moments that featured Julian's toast prominently. The comments were brutal. Imagine planning your whole wedding around your ex-boyfriend. The groom's face when he said, "Our girl, I'm deceased." This is why you don't invite your ex to your wedding. She really thought this was cute. That poor man, I hope he runs. I tried damage control, posting carefully crafted statements about misunderstandings and taking time to process emotions. But everything I posted only seemed to generate more negative attention. My mother called daily, alternating between defending my choices and suggesting I give Nathan space to come around. Darling, he's just embarrassed. Men don't handle public humiliation well. Once things calm down, you can work through this. Mom, I didn't humiliate him. Julian got carried away, but our intentions were pure. Of course they were. You're a pioneer, sweetheart. Pioneers always face resistance. But my father was less supportive when he called later that week. Eveline, I love you, but you need to face reality. You humiliated that man in front of everyone he knows. The whole thing has become a joke on the internet. Daddy, you're exaggerating. Am I? I've had 3 people send me videos of your wedding. Your cousin Lisa called to ask if you were having some kind of breakdown. Your own wedding has become a meme, sweetheart. The social isolation was swift and brutal. Friends stopped calling. Invitations to social events dried up. When I did venture out, I caught people staring and whispering. The grocery store became an exercise in endurance, as I felt eyes tracking my movement through every aisle. Julian, oblivious to the damage he'd caused, texted regularly. How are you holding up? I know Nathan will come around. Want to grab coffee and talk? I'm here for you. I hope you know how beautiful the ceremony was. Don't let anyone make you feel bad about choosing love over convention. I stopped responding, but he didn't take the hint. 2 weeks after the wedding, I received the first official document, a notice from the wedding venue requesting payment for additional cleaning and damages. Apparently, the early exodus of guests had left the venue staff with extra work and lost revenue from the bar service. Then came the vendors. The photographer wanted to discuss usage rights for the wedding photos, given their viral nature. The florist was demanding payment for arrangements that had been barely used due to the early end of the reception. The caterer sent an itemized bill for uneaten food and unused service hours. Every bill, every invoice, every demand for payment was addressed to Nathan. I tried calling the vendors to explain that I could handle the payments, but they were polite but firm. All contracts were in Nathan's name. All payments were his responsibility. When I tried to access our joint bank account to cover the expenses, I discovered that Nathan had frozen the account. My credit cards, which were linked to his accounts, had been suspended. I called Oliver again, desperate. Oliver, I need to reach Nathan. The vendors are demanding payment and I can't access our accounts. That's not my problem, Eveline. I'm his wife. Are you? Because Nathan seems to think he married someone who prioritized her ex-boyfriend over her husband at her own wedding. That's not what happened, isn't it? Because I was there, Eveline. We all were. We watched you light up every time Julian spoke. We watched you defend his inappropriate behavior. We watched you make Nathan look like a fool in front of everyone he knows. The next blow came from an unexpected source, my employer. I'd taken 2 weeks off for the wedding and honeymoon, but when I returned to work, my supervisor called me into her office. Eveline, we need to discuss your recent publicity. My what? The videos from your wedding have been circulating around the office. Some clients have seen them. We've received questions about your judgment and professionalism. My personal life has nothing to do with my work performance. Normally, I'd agree, but when your personal life becomes a viral sensation that reflects poorly on the company's image, it becomes a professional concern. I was placed on administrative leave, pending a review of my position. The isolation deepened. My phone stopped ringing entirely, except for bill collectors and reporters wanting to interview me about modern wedding trends and alternative relationship styles. I declined all interviews, but my silence only seemed to fuel more speculation. 3 weeks after the wedding, I was served with papers. Not divorce papers, something else entirely. A notice of contract termination. Every vendor, every service provider, every person we'd hired for the wedding was formally terminating their contracts and demanding immediate payment of all outstanding balances, and every single bill was being forwarded to me. The flower shop, $3,200, the caterer, $8,500, the photographer, $4,800, the venue, $12,000, the band, $2,500, the list went on. 37 separate bills totaling nearly $50,000. All due immediately, all in my name now, all because Nathan had systematically removed himself from every financial obligation related to our wedding. I called a lawyer, desperate for advice. Ms. Dorr, your husband has acted entirely within his legal rights. If his name was on the original contracts, he had the right to assign financial responsibility to you as his spouse. It's unusual, but it's legal. But I can't pay all of this. That's unfortunate, but it's not a legal problem, it's a financial one. You'll need to work out payment arrangements with the vendors or face potential collection actions. That evening, I sat in our pristine apartment surrounded by unpaid bills and legal notices, finally understanding the scope of what Nathan had done. He hadn't just left me, he'd systematically dismantled our shared financial life and left me holding the bag for every expense related to the wedding that had humiliated him. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Package for delivery. Please confirm address. 20 minutes later, a courier knocked on my door with an envelope marked personal and confidential. Inside was a single item, my engagement ring, nestled in its original box. Attached was a note in Nathan's precise handwriting. Refund processed. As I stared at the ring, the symbol of promises broken and trust destroyed, I realized that Nathan's revenge wasn't emotional or dramatic. It was methodical, legal, and devastating in its completeness. He wasn't just leaving me. He was erasing himself from my life while leaving me to face the consequences of every choice I'd made in pursuit of my perfect progressive love story. And there was nothing I could do to stop him. A month after my wedding, a courier handed me a thick legal packet, cold, final, unfamiliar. Nathan wasn't filing for divorce. He wanted an annulment for fraud and misrepresentation, claiming I'd hidden the truth about Julian. The settlement made me responsible for every engagement debt, and a cease and desist barred me from using Nathan's name or speaking publicly, social media included. Then came the evidence, texts, posts, witness statements, and recordings of Julian declaring I still loved him and the marriage wouldn't last. Worst was a prenup clause I'd sworn true. No entanglements. My lawyer called it airtight. I signed. In court, it was erased.